Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. Very pleased to be here today. Don't come to these kind of places very often, but I was pleased when Fernando approached me a few weeks ago and I said, "Would you like to come?" And said, "Perhaps I'm not the perfect speaker, inspirational speaker, but certainly I'll be pleased and I feel honored that you invited me to come and share a piece of the story of how DÍA came about. As a result, not only of my work, but I'll work with a lot of other people that have contributed throughout the years. So I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm so flattered that you invited me today.
Thank you very much. I was curious, when you came to the U.S., why did you decide to study journalism?
Well, that was easy. I was a journalist in Colombia, the country where I was born and raised, and I got the opportunity, not expected, of coming to the U.S. with a Fulbright scholarship to study journalism, which was the next phase after doing 5 years in a daily newspaper in Colombia. And I had the privilege of coming to the University of Iowa in Iowa City, and I ended up with more education that was needed really, in the marketplace. That was my challenge. My wife decided to stay and say, "I want to stay here," and we have family in this area, and then we picked it up for that reason. And really, that what happened. I came with 2 degrees basically in an environment where Hispanic reporters in the city weren't that much in demand. There's still not much in demand, despite of the fact that the community has grown so dramatically over the past 20 years. Still, the average number of Latino reporters in a mainstream newspaper today is 0.1%.
Wow.
So, and actually that what happened. I ended up trying to look for a job like anybody else, and I went to Daily News, I went to the Miami Herald, I went to other places.
And this is already with your degrees?
Right, I have the degrees, and there was no work for a Latino with 2 degrees in journalism. But that was the sign of the times, So what I started to do was to look around and, how can I feed my family? It's like, I couldn't find a job, education is not enough, I couldn't find a job. I ended up doing DÍA, which in the first version was simply a little newsletter that I pieced together in a little computer when the Mac computers were coming out, and with a new program called PageMaker. The self-publishing technology was the fascinating thing at the time, and I decided to play, basically play with the idea of doing a little publication, and it evolved, business pushing. I think the force of the marketplace, I would like to say, more than my own capacity to push it forward.
So are you saying that during that time, it was just the right time for the marketplace for you to grow that business?
No. At the time, Philadelphia had only one Hispanic news media outlet, one radio station that broadcast only between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. That was it. There were 2 or 3 neighborhood newspapers. That was it. Today we have 3 or 4 radio stations. We have 3 TV stations, and we have a dozen of newspapers. Right. So that's the evolution of the community. Representing media, one of these outlets is owned by Comcast, it's called Telemundo. So big investment have finally come to industry where there is obviously an opportunity to generate revenues as a result of the fact that Latinos, the consumers, are hardworking people that have disposable income. Therefore, the advertisers go after that. So that's the reason why the evolution has been pretty steady for the past 20 years.
And how do you think? I'm very interested in the fact that you came here as a Latino with degrees, and you still were unable to find or secure a job that was able to help you, right? So you became an entrepreneur. So that whole evolution of your experience here as an immigrant, but also as an entrepreneur, how do you think that would relate to, let's say, new immigrants or recent immigrants coming now to the United States, for example?
Well, it's now I realize that I probably had too much education. I ended up being a driver.
Oh.
my first job was driving a newspaper route or an existing Hispanic newspaper route. That's what I learned. Well, that's pretty simple. A newspaper is not that difficult. And then that was what happened. Although I had to that education, I had to work for another type of for less than $12 an hour, whatever.
Well, so you learned in the job. You were not just driving, but you were observing.
Correct.
The
correct.
business side of it. Right?
Correct. Perhaps that was the benefit of that experience. That I was while I was doing the work, I was looking around and saying, this is not. It's complete. I learned a lot. And I learned a lot about the Hispanic community in Philadelphia. And then when I saw how the paper was produced, I said something like this could be done in my living room.
Why do they have this big building, right?
Right.
Everything.
I looked at my little computer and said maybe I could play with that, and that was simply the way it happened. So, if we could give you an advice to young people in the room, that's what you need to do. Look around. If it doesn't come, don't complain about it. Number one, don't think it's a dead end. Opportunities are all around you, based on the simple fact that the Hispanic community continues growing, and this community is playing a major role not only in the economy of the region, but also eventually in the politics of the region as well. So prepare yourself for what's going to happen in 10 years, not look what is in front of you next week.
So you mentioned sort of the politics changing in the region as well, and obviously you have a very good insight into that world of the changing politics in the region, particularly I'm assuming in Philadelphia, but also in surrounding areas. So why do you think that this change is happening? Is it because of the numbers? I mean, more Latinos are coming? Is it because, like you said earlier, businesses are starting to see the value of the Latino consumer? What do you think attributes to that? And how do you think Latino students, in particular, as future people in the workforce, right, and professionals, can learn from what you know about the community and its growth?
Well, that's like 10 questions.
Yeah, sorry. So the changes and then how students can learn from that change that's happening.
Yeah, well, it's important to be aware that 20 years ago, I described the situation in media, there was only a handful of outlets, very modest, extremely modest. Today we have a good number of them, and they are all doing a great job and generating revenues for the owners. In business, obviously, we have seen a growth as well of people like me who didn't have any necessarily the passion to become an entrepreneur, but were pushed into the field because that was the only option. And then we discovered that entrepreneurship wasn't something that we couldn't do. That we could own the thing if we choose to. You had to pay the price to take the route, of course, because you had to invest the years and the efforts and the tears to move that forward to finally be a business that sustains you. It didn't start with that idea, but it evolved to be like that, fortunately, because the market was there and it continues to grow. So in the political world, I'm not so much aware of it. I don't get too much in politics. As a journalist, I have my information, kind of an attitude of staying away from that. But obviously, politics touches all of us. Touches business and touches everything, so we need to obviously get involved as well. I've been an evolution. It's not dramatic evolution, but evolution nevertheless was a little bit more of representation of Latino names in the cabinet, the governor or the mayoral office. We see more Latinos, not as many as they need them, but obviously there is a push, again, it's like the push of the forces in the society and the marketplace and the political need of appointing some Latino because we can't have representation, we cannot exclude them. So it's happening more because of that, I think. Initial acknowledgement of the institutions and the political leaders of the region to say we need to include Latinos, but obviously that there is a big deficit in that because it's only a tiny representation compared to the size of the community.
And you talked a little bit about the tiers of your struggles, I guess, right? Becoming a business and growing it. What in your experience, what failures in business and or in college that you think you experienced that you learned from, and that maybe the students can like see that you also experience some things, right?
Well, business in general, I think, is an area where where mistakes are made every day. To do a Hispanic business is even more complicated because there is no script for that.
Yeah.
There is no previous experience. There is no reference we can look for. Let me read the history of what happened 25 years ago to how they did it. Like starting from zero.
Yeah.
Mistakes great made all the time, but where the lessons learned from those mistakes that make you a little bit less upward performing in business. So you need to make the mistake. In other words, I defend the mistakes as necessary. It's a lesson that you learn that are necessary for you to become more capable of performing next time. So welcome the mistakes, face the challenges, and make mistakes because they are going to be teaching you something that is going to be useful for the next round.